um, the Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Cadmonites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaimites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Girgashites and the Jebusites. Now basically, that was Yahweh's promise that we were going to inherit the land of Israel. Now continuing on in chapter 16, Genesis 16, it says, "Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian named Hagar. She had a handmaid, an Egyptian named Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abraham, Behold now, Yahweh restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abraham hearkened to the voice of Sarai." So basically, his wife Sarai knew that Abraham was childless, so she didn't want him to perish childless. So she said, "Take my handmaid and have a child through her." So Abraham consented to that, and in verse 3 it says, "And Sarai, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, the handmaid, the Egyptian, and after Abraham had dwelt 20 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife." So that meant that Yahweh's promise had been a long time coming, and I guess Sarai was getting a bit. Obviously, women don't have a strong faith as men do, so she was getting a bit worried that Abraham might go childless. So she said, "Take my handmaid, have a child through her." And Abraham went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. So basically, and it goes in verse 5, it says, "And Sarai said unto Abraham, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes, and Yahweh judged between me and thee. But Abraham said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face." So basically, Hagar got proud. When Hagar saw that she'd conceived a child by Abraham, which was Ishmael, she started to feel like she was better than her mistress, which was Sarai. So that's why Sarai dealt harshly with Hagar, and that's why Hagar fled. But that goes to show you that, women who bore children back in those days, they thought they were on a higher level than women that couldn't bear children and were barren. So let me jump to Genesis chapter 17. And I think the point's in verse 21. Alright, let me I'm just trying to think of where to start. Alright, let me start from verse 17. This is Genesis 17 and 17. And it says, "And then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed and said in his heart and said..." No, let me jump up a bit. We start from verse 15. "And Yahweh said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I will bless her and give thee a son also of her. And yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations." So here you have this woman who's barren for, I think she was like 90 years old, which in her 90s when she bore Isaac. So for 90 years of her life she'd been totally barren. But then Yahweh comes and says, through his angels, and he says that she's going to be a mother of nations. So that's a big thing. A woman who's been barren all her life is going to end up being a mother of nations. And Abraham fell upon his face and laughed and said in his heart, "Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear?" And Abraham said unto Yahweh, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee." And Yahweh said, "Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac," which means laughter. "And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him." And this is where we come in, because as Israelites, the covenant and the promise was made to our forefather Jacob, whose father was Isaac, whose father was Abraham. So that's the line that the promise was given to. And us being the descendants of Jacob have to believe in that promise, that that it's still going to come to pass, that we're going to come up out of this captivity and have dominion over all nations and all earth, pursuant to Revelations chapter 2, I think 25. Let me just quickly pull that. Spirit's leading me there. Yeah, Revelations chapter 2 and 25, I was right. And it says, but that which thou already have, hold fast till I come. This is Yahushua talking. And it says, and he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. And he shall rule them with a rod of iron. As the vessels of a potter, they shall be broken to shivers, even as I have received of my Father. So basically, that's the promise that we're waiting to inherit. Rulership and dominion over the planet Earth. So continuing on in Genesis chapter 17 and verse 18, it says, Genesis chapter 19, and Yahweh said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. Now you've got to remember that word everlasting. That means this covenant is going to last to eternity and beyond. There's no way that this covenant can ever be broken, because this is Yahweh's word and his testimony. So, and it says in Genesis chapter 17 verse 20, and it says, and as for Ishmael, I have heard thee, behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and will make him a great nation. So the Ishmaelites, which is the so-called Arabs, they are a great nation in terms of number. They have a position in this earth, but they aren't the Israelites. They aren't going to inherit the full promise and full blessings that was bestowed upon Abraham, Isaac and Jacob and their seed after them. So, and it says in verse 21, but my covenant will I establish with Isaac. Yep, that just proves the point. Now I said, but my covenant I will establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. And he left off talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in their house, that were bought with money, and circumcised them. So that's the institution of the circumcision. Alright, I'm going to jump on a bit. In Genesis chapter 18, the angels come to visit Abraham again, and Genesis 18 and 6, and Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah and said, make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal. So lucky there's a bit of noise there. Just wait for it to pass. Alright, continue. And it says, and Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah and said, make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. But Abraham ran unto the herd and fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it unto a young man, and he hasted to dress it. And he took butter and milk and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them, and he stood by them under a tree, and they did eat. And they said unto him, where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return, this is the angel, and he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, and lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. So I guess she must have got at an age where she stopped having her period and so on and so forth. So she was an old woman. So she stopped having, I guess, that menstrual cycle where women could conceive. So this is a great miracle that the Lord is going to do. He's going to take a completely barren woman in old age and give her children and make a great nation out of her. So a nation out of her through Abraham, because women are not the progenitors of nations. Nations come from men. So because men carry the seed. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure in my Lord being old also? So she basically laughed because she didn't believe it was possible. And Yahweh said unto Abraham, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? Is anything too hard for Yahweh? At that time appointed, I will return unto thee according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for I was afraid, for she was afraid. And he said, nay, but thou didst laugh. So basically, that goes to show you that women, even back in those days, when Sarah was a righteous woman, she still lied to an angel, and that's not a light thing. She tried to lie to an angel, man. How much more these women in this current society, man? These women in this society are all the way bugged out and full of lies and full of deceptions and full of deceit and wickedness. As the account in Wisdom, Ecclesiastes says, he found one righteous man amidst 1,000, but not one righteous woman did he find. And King Solomon, who was Yahweh Shai, if you can receive it in the spirit, was a very wise man, the wisest man, they say, to have ever lived. And he couldn't find a righteous woman, and he had multiple women. Anyway, continuing, it says, and Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid. And he said, nay, but thou didst laugh. And the men rose up from thence and looked towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. And this goes into the account of when Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, which isn't the main focus of this lesson. I've already done a lesson on that if you guys want to look that one up. So I'm going to continue talking about women who couldn't bear children in the scriptures. So I've made the point on Sarah. Let's jump to Lot's daughters. This is in Genesis 18, I believe. Isn't too far from where I was, so that's convenient. No, Genesis chapter 19. Now, after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot escaped with his 2 daughters and his wife. But his wife broke the commandment that was given by Yahweh of not to look back at the destruction of Sodom. She looked back and she got turned into a pillar of salt, which is why the scriptures say, remember Lot's wife. Now, I could go up to any woman in the street. Well, not any woman. There might be some Jakes who are in the Catholic Church who might know this story. Not the Catholic Church, but the church in general. They might be familiar with this story, but they're not really taking it to heart. The point is that you're supposed to remember Lot's wife. She's supposed to be an example for all of the women who want to do foolishness and break the law of Yahweh and look back at their past, rather than coming to the Lord and serving Him with a 100% focus and serving the Lord with 100% of their focus. Just totally meditating on the law of the Lord. Now, women don't really have a strong connection with Yahweh B'Shem Yahshai. The woman's connection to Yahweh B'Shem Yahshai comes through her man. So really, the woman is supposed to look to her husband for the want of all things, and she's really supposed to be taking on a man of the Lord, because basically the scriptures say, I can't remember off the top of my head exactly where this precept is, but roughly paraphrasing, it says, better it is to be without children than to have them that are ungodly. Because basically, if the ungodly children are basically multiplied for the sword. So basically, when Yahushua comes back and he cracks the clouds, he comes with his chariots, which the world even calls UFOs, to render his destruction upon this place. The only people who are going to be saved is the elect men, which is the 144,000, and 1/3 of Israel, which will be with them, which might be their wives and their children and family members and whoever else who is deemed worthy for salvation. But the main way that a woman can be saved is through bearing a child of the elect. Women will be saved through childbearing. So in Genesis, after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's wife was destroyed, so it's just Lot and his 2 daughters, and the destruction was so great that the daughters feared that there wasn't another man in the whole earth, because the destruction was that bad. They'd seen everybody get taken out, so they were scared that there were no men for them to continue their father's line. So this is what they did. And it says, and Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain with his 2 daughters with him, For he fared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father to drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the morrow, the firstborn said unto the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in and lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. So that again, that tells you that the seed comes from a man. And the word seed, I believe in the Greek, it means sperma. So that means sperm, and the man carries the sperm, the woman carries the egg. And they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. Now, according to the law, that was not what was supposed to be done. You're not supposed to have sex. A father's not supposed to have sex with his daughter. The daughter's not supposed to have sex with her father. You're not supposed to sleep with your father's wife. I think it was Reuben who defiled one of Jacob's concubines by sleeping with her. You're not supposed to, marry your near kin. That's in the law. So what happened is, it says in Genesis chapter 19 and verse 36, Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. And the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab, which is the true name of what the world today would ignorantly call Chinese people. They're the Moabites. The same is of the... There you go. It says, And the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. So that's where you get the Moabites from. And the younger bare a son also, and called his name Ben-Ami, which is the Japanese. What the world ignorantly calls Japanese people today are really the Ammonites. So it says, and the younger bare him, so it's lucky. Genesis 19 and 38. And the younger, she also bare a son, and called his name Ben-Ami. The same is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. Ben-Ami. So that's the account of what Lot's daughters did, because they were trying to preserve the seed line of their father, which again goes to show you the importance. Even though it was going off, the women knew the importance of bearing children and continuing the lineage of their father, which isn't something that's really held in high regard in this modern fucked up society. So that's the account of Lot's daughters. I want to get into another character in the Bible. Let's go to Rebecca. No. Jumping back to Sarah, there's a point I forgot to make in Genesis chapter 21. Here we go. Yeah, Genesis chapter 21 and 1. So going back to Abraham and Sarah, and it says, And Yahweh visited Sarah as he had said, and Yahweh did unto Sarah as he had spoken. As I told you, Yahweh is not a man that he should lie. When Yahweh's word goes out, it doesn't return unto him void. And it says, For Sarah conceived, and she bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which Yahweh had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And as I said, the name Isaac means laughter, which means that it was a great joy for Sarah after all those 90 years of being barren, thinking that she was never ever going to have a kid. Imagine that. You've gone through your whole life without children, wanting and hoping and praying that it would come to pass, and then finally the Lord grants your wish. She must have been over the moon, so I guess it was a omen that Isaac was named Isaac. Now if you can receive this through the Spirit, Isaac was Yahweh Shai in the reincarnation. But that's another lesson, just putting it out there if you can receive it through the Spirit, because reincarnation is biblical, but not like the way the heathens teach, such as you might have Hindus or whatever, they believe that, or Sheiks or whatever bugged out religions, they think that, if you do bad things in this life, you're going to be reincarnated as a frog or a stone or some other shit. No, that's not how reincarnation works. There's a spirit of man, and there's different spirits of beasts. The spirits of men and beasts are different. So when you die, you're going to be reincarnated in your lot, which is like, if you're a man, you're going to come back as a man, and you're also going to come back in your nation. You could come back through any of the tribes of the nation. Like, for example, in this life you might be a Judite, in your past life you might have been from the tribe